Yeah, you know, we've got even worse leadership over here, really, and in a lot of ways, and we've got the same. I can hear the outrage in your voice, and I am really outraged because I got, as I might have told you, I got pneumonia on a plane over the
Right.
holidays, and it might have been COVID. I don't know, but the whole approach to it's just been insane.
It's been abysmal, especially for leaders that we're meant to look up to and we're meant to look for direction. They've not done what has been needed.
Exactly, and hopefully in America we've got a chance at curing a lot of this in a few months, and we'll keep our fingers crossed. But we're all very engaged and active about doing that. And if we do, then hopefully it will have some trickle effect in the world, because there is something to be said for American leadership when it exists. Right now, it doesn't exist.
I would say the same for UK leadership. It's not been leadership to
No.
the extent that it should be.
And I agree with you. The UK has enormous influence all over the world, and rightly so. But not now.
Especially when you consider that China was the first country to have it, and they really acted on it. And whatever measures they used, whether it's ethical or not, their citizens were safe. And then our country, we had like a month in advance to prepare, but nothing changed. And now we're the worst hit country in Europe.
I've just written a song. One of the things I'm doing in the off period is I'm with my daughters, and one of them is very musical, and so I'm writing protest songs with her. And one of the songs is about the doctor in Wuhan. Dr.
Yes.
Lee was his name, and what he went through, and his whistleblowing. And
Yeah.
he blew that whistle at the end of December.
Mm-hmm.
So we had and of course we've got all our spies and everything hovering around everywhere, and particularly Wuhan because of the center there, the lab there. So
Yes.
we really had the opportunity to do something about this early on. And
It makes you question what the intentions are of the government, because there's no doubt that they knew it and they had the power and the tactics to really help, but in a
yes.
way they chose not to.
I know, and that's it can feed all kinds of both paranoid and perhaps logical wondering about what their motives really are.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in both in America and Britain, we have, there's also the possibility of just leaderless, just believing in a corporate kind of thing, and not believing in strong government. So but it's very, very worrisome. And here we are, we're going to be talking about a golden civilization. We just added another person. And is it Shaw? Is this Nandish? Is this your friend?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Oh, I'm so glad. Nice to meet you. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Oh, fantastic. How are you doing? Nice to meet you guys. I'm grateful to be on the call with you. Apologies for running a bit late. Was trying to get signal.
Well, we're just really delighted that you're here, and we now have people from all over the world really in this call, and that's quite a wonderful and inspiring thing. So, great to have you here. Is it Shaw?
Shabraz.
Shabraz. Okay, I'll work. All right. Yeah, good. So I don't know, is Mary, I assume Mary Zimmerman will be coming, but we don't know. I haven't heard from her, so I'm not sure. Let me start with just the frame that we usually start with a little bit of mindfulness. So I think we'll start with that. And then I'm really curious, Rory, so good to see you. Grace, good to see you again.
You too, George. Great to see you. And everybody else, great to see you.
Yeah, wonderful. And Martin, always good to see you. Very good. So what we'll do, let's do just a little bit of mindfulness, just to ground ourselves, particularly after hearing Nandish and me just bemoaning, the powers that be, and come back to the frame that we're here for, which is the golden civilization, something quite different from what we see a lot of the time around us. So, and then I'd love to hear from you, because I know, Grace, you left with some thought that you might incorporate some, and I know you've communicated with Mary and Rory. You've been thinking about doing something, curious what's happening. Nandish bringing Shabraz as well. So love to hear from you, your thoughts. We might just go around the circle and see why people are here. Laura, Natalie, anything I'm missing there? Do you think that sounds good?
Sounds great. Thank you, George.
Great, great, great. Thank you. So let's start just acknowledging, finding a place where you feel comfortable just to sit. And I'm just going to do this for a minute or two this time. And as I'm doing it, I'm going to explain a little bit of what and why we're doing, as opposed to leading you into the mindfulness. But for a moment, find your posture and a quiet place inside your mind. And I know Shabraz is still finding the signal and everything and where he's going to be. But so the purpose is to come inside and to let all the thoughts go that you've brought into this meeting. And this is valuable when we start a golden civilization conversation, to kind of clear our mind and our being of all of those preoccupations. And usually we instruct people to come to the breath, to follow and feel the breath. Sometimes one feels it predominantly at the nostrils, sometimes at the belly. And sometimes just the feeling the sensations in the whole body. So we're opening ourselves to our immediate experience and to experiences that are closer to both spirit, because non-conceptual, and to simplicity, again, because we're not analyzing, and to our feelings. And because we're quiet with our feelings, and because we're focused, we're bringing ourselves closer to the feelings as well that might have forgiveness or generosity or an openness of heart within them. So what I sometimes call virtues. And so just letting our thoughts go and grounding ourselves in this immediate experience of present sensations. Recognizing as we do that other things also might be there that we're cultivating. We're certainly cultivating attention. We're cultivating an equanimity. We're no longer driven by our thoughts, but just allowing our experience to be. We're cultivating forgiveness and kindness of heart when a feeling comes up that's troublesome, and we find our way through it to being at ease again. So we're also cultivating a capacity for transformation inside of ourselves. We're cultivating patience. Because we're no longer trapped in the rush of our feelings. We're cultivating generosity by being open to whatever we're listening to inside the body. Just as in a moment, we're going to be listening to each other. And with that same quality of generosity of spirit. So now, as we come out of this, I'd love to just hear from you for a moment about this. When I began a Golden Civilization conversation, we'll begin with this kind of mindfulness practice and little reminders in it of these, what you might call virtues: good-heartedness, kindness, simplicity, truthfulness, wisdom. So I will then bring to the group that it's important that we listen, just as we just listen to ourselves, that we listen with those same qualities of kindness, equanimity, generosity of spirit to each other, even where someone might be pressing our buttons in some way, which can happen around conversation that is global as we're aiming it. And so that helps to ground people and help them to be aware that that's part of participative democracy, is being really open to each other and having that spirit. Any comment on that? So I almost always begin with that mindfulness, those reminders, and then reminding the group that as we now look to what would be a golden civilization that would be inspiring to live into, to keep these attitudes that we've developed inside of ourselves in the meditation. Any comment on that? Mary, you've done this a number of times. Laura, you've been involved with this a number of times. But any of you, and any of you that have tried this recently, feel free to comment on this piece of it. And then I just want to open to why you're here. So.
I'd like to share an experience that I had probably about 30 years ago when I worked for a large bank, and my office had a view of the floor. So I saw people coming in and go to the teller station and do whatever they needed to do. And one day I noticed that when one particular customer came in, the staff looked at him more than anybody else. And that caught my eye, and I wasn't really sure why that was. So as he came in again, I started watching more closely, and I noticed his interactions with the other people, with the bankers and the people around him, and they were invariably heartwarming, I think would be the word, because he was always smiling and kind and this and the other. So one day I went up to him and said,
"You just broke up on me. Did the rest of you hear?"
Okay.
Yeah.
We can hear.
Okay.
Where I lost you, Martin, was there invariably, is it my internet connection? It might be mine.
It might be yours, George.
Laura, take over.
Okay. Keep going, Martin. We're with you.
Okay. So then one day I went up to this gentleman and introduced myself, and I said, "Do you mind talking to me for a few minutes?" He said, "Sure." And so I said, "Can we sit down?" And we did. And I said, "I want to ask you, whenever I see you with other people in the bank, you always seem to be like never in a hurry. You're always friendly and you're smiling a lot." I said, "What, do you mind telling me what's your story?" He said, "You really want to know?" I said, yeah, I do." So he said, "I had a near-death experience, and obviously I came out of it, and it caused me to reflect and think about what is important in my life." And he said, "I came to the conclusion that there's only one thing that matters, and that is kindness." So that is what I try to do every day. And it was obvious because people noticing it, and then I asked him, and then he told me. So, and I think about it a lot. It happened about 30 years ago, and it is with me as if it were yesterday. Yeah. So I try to be there myself. Yeah. But no, that's my story.
Beautiful. It's a wonderful story to actually start a golden civilization conversation with, because it reminds us all of how important that is as we figure this world out and go to a great place with it. And thank you, Martin. And anyone else reflecting on this mindfulness piece before we go to why you're here? Yeah, Grace.
I've been doing a great deal of reflection the past few days. And one of the things I'm juggling with is the importance of the letter of the sound k. Let's say the sound k rather than the letter C, because kindness then fits into it, and consciousness, and civilization, and COVID, and cost. And it's like everything is becoming integrated. And to me, it's just, I'm just still working out what the significance is, because I see, you know, I've been around for probably longer than most of you, if not all of you. And I've always thought, you know, I've obviously had my challenges and they've been difficult times, but post-World War II has been, in the evolutionary history, a pretty good time to live in, because the standard of living has basically gone up since the Second World War, except it's for the last generation or so. And to be faced now with this, well, crisis is another word, this existential crisis, that we're all in, and I'm still here in this world. And whilst I'm a very pragmatic and down-to-earth person, I just feel there must be some significance in this time, and the fact that I'm here and conscious and aware that I must have a role to play, and I'm looking for that role.
Oh, beautiful, Grace. How beautifully said. Lovely. Thank you so much for that reflection and the wisdom of having been around a long time and seeing all of that.
Now, George, I'm noticing that you actually are recording this.
Oh, yeah, Laura, is that, Laura's in charge of all that. Is that okay?
Because Laura, I just said something now spontaneously, but I'd love to have a record of it for my developing my portfolio. So
will, yes. So we are recording this because we want, and we share it just with our audience that's registered for this program, because not everyone can be here live, but we'll share this out with the group that's registered. And so you will be able to pull that clip and be able to record it, Grace. It was lovely.
Yeah. Do you send the recording?
I do. I'll send it out. Yes.
Okay. Now, having said that, George, I was very amazed and impressed that when, in your introductory comments, you seemed to recollect what my closing words were in the previous meeting, which I didn't recollect. And was it because you listened to the recording or you actually remembered? Because
you're a hard person to forget, Grace. I remember it very well, and was very touched that you came on and shared with us when we're part of the conversation. And then I did have a little prompt maybe a week or two ago. I think I got an email from Mary, or we all got an email from Mary, just saying that she was in communication with you, I think. And so I was reminded one more time of you, but no, I haven't listened to the recording at all.
Well, Marion and I are now close friends, I want you to know. You know, you used to have pen pals in the old days, but I've developed Zoom pals in the past few months that have been absolutely amazing. While I've got the floor, I just want to mention something that I have got to please close just before 7 o'clock. And I've got a very good reason, because I am attending the most amazing 9-day seminar tuition called Climate Reality, which is done by Gore, what's his name? Gore.
Al Gore.
Al Gore.
Al Gore, yeah. And we've got a session at 7. So I'm just telling you now in case I disappear in a hurry, but so much of what you teach, George, I'm hearing, you know, climate change and justice, and how the people who are most affected by it are the ones who haven't caused it. And so the needs of the earth at this incredibly significant point in history are coming home to me in the most revelationary manner. So I'm just trying to make sense of it all.
Yeah, thank you, Grace. Thank you very much. Again, wonderful to have you here. And we're all feeling this so much, and it's perplexing. As Nandish and I were talking at the beginning, it's perplexing to us. How come the authorities don't get it in some way? And but wonderful.
But this whole thing about authoritarianism again.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it's, you're taking a whole new look about. I mean, who thought that we'd be listening to the government telling us we must wear a mask or not wear a mask, or, you know, actually affecting our lives in this way? It's
Thank you, Grace. So I think I'm just going to check in with Mary because she's done so many of these, and then I'm going to ask. Shabraz has already shared on the chat, and I'm going to ask all of you, each of you, including those of you who are brand new, to share. So Mary, anything you want to share just from what you've heard so far, and how?
Sure, I was just checking to see what Shabraz had said because I hadn't seen you before. Hello, oops, and so I just have to say I laugh with Grace's introduction there because she and I are confessed Zoomaholics at this stage. But what I find, what's coming to my mind as we deepen the conversations, and after we've had a golden civilization conversation, how the second ones and the third ones can go along. And I will say, for instance, and Grace and I had a chat after one of her gatherings, just about how South Africa handled their drought situation and what they did. It was amazing to me because I'm in Arizona where we have periodic droughts, but how they had to contain it. I mean, 3-minute showers were mandated. She said, no baths. And I said, no bars? And she goes, no baths. So I didn't understand her, but imagine, and having to capture your shower water while you take a shower, things that we can all do. I think that it would be so fun, especially now that on Zoom we can break into those groups, to just have that overall discussion, similar to those TED circles that Grace is doing, where, and George, you could do a Zoom that we could all watch, and then the groups around the country could gather and talk about what happened in your Zoom, just like they're doing in the TED circles, where you watch a TED talk and then you discuss it. So I think there are some things that we can really look forward to doing, where we can just take one topic and just see all the different ways that you envision it happening, and knowing what's happening in South Africa and what's happening in the UK at the very same time, real time. I see a lot of wonderful progress going forward. That's what's on my mind.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Mary. And I love the notion. I mean, we're taking this big picture of golden civilization, but part of the notion is to, over time, to break into the smaller topics, as you say, and focus. And I think when you apply a golden civilization frame, an evoke frame, if you will, to almost any problem in the world, so many solutions begin to come to mind that are real solutions. So thank you, Mary. And I realized that Rory, I think you missed the last time, but I didn't know whether so I want to address you and then really just open to anyone who hasn't spoken. Rory, I don't know if you attempted a golden civilization conversation with your group, and if so, we'd love to hear how that went, but if not, we're here obviously.
Absolutely, George. Yeah, absolutely. And I did. I missed last time around, and for those of you guys that weren't at previous sessions, I had a contact in Dublin inner city. It's very much an inner city project looking after the disadvantaged people in there, backed by the church. So my particular contact was the minister of this church, and initially it was a very, very good idea, but I guess what happened, George, church life kind of took over and it just kind of fell by the wayside, so I didn't quite get it going. But it leads me on to, and I would have a good relationship with this guy anyway. So hopefully, you know, we're in the middle of the summer months that I can revisit this. But to follow on, and I had this kind of on my mind, what Mary said there in terms of we can all do it potentially on a group basis. It is great. We'll have some success individually, some wins, some losses. But I think on a group basis, potentially we can do so much more, George. And to give you an example, and I came in a couple of minutes late on today's session, but I know on my, I'm a financial planner, guys, and would do a lot of financial life planning work through the Kinder Institute with George and his team here. And the conversations that I'm having over the last number of months with people that are in the middle of this COVID-19, they're absolutely amazing conversations, because what we're able to do is focus on an individual or a couple and what's really, really important in their lives, their personal goals and dreams. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world, but I find that conversation on a life planning level quite amazing and quite powerful in the last couple of months. And I just think on a golden civilization, which is very similar, it's just on a broader, more comprehensive level. We as a group here, and whoever else comes in on future sessions, as Mary said, George, I think with a bit of planning and a bit of thought, we could do it in a different way on a group basis and open it up to more and more people, because we're going to have more and more uncertainty in our world over the next who knows how long.
Yeah. Thank you, Rory. And you know, I've given the Golden Civilization conversation in a number of churches in different parts of the world. And if there's anything I can do to add support for you, and Laura and Natalie are aware of those meetings, we'd love to give it and
get that one back on track as such. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, happy to, you know, I imagine I could get a testimonial even from either of the preachers. One of them was my brother, so he owes me one.
He'll give you a good one, yeah.
But they're wonderful groups, and thank you. Yeah, great.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And I know from Shahbaz, from the chatting, he's probably eager to talk and haven't had a chance. And Nandish and I started the whole thing off. So maybe Shahbaz, is the accent on the Shah or on the Braz? How do you, you're on mute. How do you pronounce your name? How would you like us to?
It's Shahbaz. Shaz for short, it's fine.
Shahbaz. Great. Shah, great. All right, my friend. Very glad to have you here. And we've been really lucky to know Nandish over this last year or so. So do tell us what your thoughts are coming in, what you'd like to get out of this, and then we'll continue to move.
So firstly, I would like to say a massive thank you for Nandish and yourself for organizing and facilitating such a lovely group and a national, international opportunity to speak and be heard. So thank you very much. I'm Shahbaz, inspirational speaker, a life coach, and a community activist. I'm a youth worker, so I work with young people, helping them, taking them on a journey and developing them within their life journey. I've been doing that now for 5 years. It's been it's going to be the 5th year, next year. And then I'm looking to travel the world and explore the world to one day open an orphanage in every city on the planet. Woo! So very ambitious, very ambitious. But I think with leaders around the world, I think it's more than a possibility to facilitate something valuable as education. Making that open to any person in the world would be phenomenal. It would be an incredible achievement, but it's not a one-man army. It's about having leaders and getting around individuals like yourselves and being on cause like this to really focus and work towards the bigger picture in life. But thank you for your time and giving me the opportunity to speak. I look forward to hearing from you guys as well. And I'm really interested in learning what you guys do to be able to make this happen.
Wow. Well, Shabraz, you've already inspired me, and I'm sure that's true for everybody on the frame here. Really wonderful to hear your story, your passion, what you're doing now, and your image for the future. It's so clear and strong. For a young man, you take me back to my early days, and I love it. I love hearing it, and I'm excited. I can just see these orphanages all over the world. In cities all over the world popping up just because of your passion for it. Very excited to hear. And that's how it happens. It happens from that energy. That's really what life planning is about. What you're hearing a number of people on the show here are life planners, which means they inspire people, at least individually. Wonderful to hear about your groups and your speaking. And I don't know if Nandish has shared with you the frame of a golden civilization conversation, but we will cover that frame because you could use that frame in any of the groups that you're doing. And it would be an inspiring experience for them. You could run it, or you could invite one of us to help out in some way, or you and Nandish together. And it really helps people move forward. So projects like orphanages are projects that one would expect to come out of these kinds of communities. But it's non-hierarchical. We just say, what do you want? You know, it's like hearing from you. And so people, when they're given that possibility, they're inspired and inspiring to others. That's really, isn't that what gives us hope in this time? Yeah, thank you. Wonderful to hear from you. So we'll continue, and Nandish, anything you would like to share, and then we'll open up a little bit more to the frame of the golden civilization.
So exactly as you mentioned, so I said to Shabraz that this sort of talk is something that would really benefit the youth work that he does. And for me, I didn't want to, I told him that even though I could possibly do a talk, I would much rather him hear it directly from you to get the full enthusiasm and the full quality of it. So yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'm inspired. That's and again, you've all said this, but we come from all over the world here. This is so amazing and so wonderful, and it gives you such a good-hearted feeling, thinking that we're together as human beings, and that's the most important thing. So let's, shall we go to the frame of the golden civilization? Is there anything anybody else, Laura, Natalie, anything you'd like to say? No, Laura and Natalie are on my staff, Shabraz, since you haven't heard from us. And Laura, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add that I was thinking about what your prompt earlier, George, around what came up for me as a result of the meditation, and what I appreciate about having the meditation, even if it's just a brief few seconds or if it's a few minutes, it offers a transition from the hectic life or what my thought process might have been prior to coming into this conversation, and makes me feel so much more open to all of the sharing that we experience. And I feel like that's obviously an intentional part of the golden civilization conversation of creating this environment, this container where everyone can share from their heart and it's accepted by each individual. And I feel like as we're having you model the inner listening experience, I feel more confident being able to deliver that myself.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Laura. Beautifully said, and really that is the purpose, isn't it? Thank you. Natalie, anything?
Yeah, I would just say that, in terms of anything that I would add, I enjoy being on these calls because I find it so inspiring to see all the people who come on, some people from week to week, a few people, just hopping in for one meeting or so. And it's it's definitely a breath of fresh air in terms of people like very committed to like making a change, and it's inspiring to bear witness to that. And I think that like there has never been a better time, because right now like there's so much going on. Like people are willing to have these conversations, I would say, for probably the first time in many years. And it's really nice to have like some sort of framework or like guidance to make sure that we can get the most out of that time period, because that's like where the real change will happen.
Beautiful, beautiful. Natalie, thank you. Thank you so much. Wonderfully said. And before I go to the frame, I want to share that Laura and I just participated in a Golden Civilization conversation, a formal one, step by step, all the way through. And Shah says, the time is now. Yes. Love to hear it. And we just participated in one 2 nights ago. And it was, for America, it was relatively diverse in that it had representatives from the native communities in America. It was people from all over America were part of it, and from all levels of experience of the world. A lot of deep thinkers were in it, and we're going to share some of the thoughts that they came up with. Just as part of our frame, we'll give you a quick reference to it. We won't pause long with it, but it was wonderful to see once again just how inspiring the Golden Civilization, the conversation is. Laura, should we show the 3 flip charts? Just not the 3 that have all the words in them yet, but just the ones, the basic frame. So Shah gets the sense of that frame, and we're all reminded of it. So here's the frame. It's 3 flip charts, and after the mindfulness exercise, and we're going to come back and show everybody's picture in a moment, but it's 3 flip charts, and I usually show all 3 of them just to say, okay, this is the frame we're going to go in. But Laura and I were just talking this morning about how, well, maybe we just do one at a time and not tell them where we're going with it, and I think that's a possibility as well. I like kind of knowing where we're going. But what we do is we spend the first third of the time on the vision, and then the next third of the time really on the obstacles, and then the final third of the time on action. So the vision is glorious. It's golden. It's inspiring, and the obstacles are what we kind of tackle every day as we turn on the news. But we also recognize the challenges inside ourselves. A lot of the obstacles that come up all over the world are inner obstacles. And then we end with inspired action. So Laura, let's come back to the group just for a moment, just to have that frame. So what's cool about it is that, most people are kind of worn down with what's happening in the world. And just like Nandish and I beginning this, about the COVID and the response to it, it's so easy to get pulled into and caught up in the dysfunctionality that's there. So what's wonderful about the conversation is we don't touch on that until we get to the obstacles. So we might listen a bit, as in the evoke life planning process. We're certainly graciously listening as people enter. So Nandish and I are just kvetching at the beginning, and it's wonderful to share and feel that we're on the same page and everything. But then we go into, well, what's the vision? We go into a meditation, and then what's the vision? Meditation is brief, and the vision is universally inspiring. And it often has the virtues that I talked about earlier. And it doesn't come from the leader. I mean, occasionally I'll bring something in if I'm leading, but there's a lot of times where I want to hold myself back and just let it all come out of the group. Because how wonderful to feel that they're creating this community, particularly if I'm less likely to be at the second or third meeting. I want their thoughts and ideas to be central, because then it's real democracy, it's real participative and all of that. So that first thing is just the vision. And we ask this question, you know, we're there, we've arrived. Golden civilization, it's here. Shabras, all those orphanages are here, you know, and so that's, you know, the golden civilization's here. What's it like? And we ask people then to just imagine being there and then share. What is it like? And they share all these wonderful things. And that's what goes in that circle. And I'm going to share each of these, and then we might see what people have to say and come back to some of the languaging that happened the other night. So so that's a third of the meeting. And at the end of that meeting, we set it up, yeah, by saying, you're already there, what's it like? And then at the end of that, we say, okay, if we were able, joining groups from all over the world together, to deliver this golden civilization into the world within a generation, how would that be? How would that be? Within a single generation. And we get enough enthusiasm that we go, yeah, great, wonderful. We see that it, and that's what we're looking for. There's some anxiety there, because it's a huge, huge deal to tackle in that amount of time, but an enormous amount of energy. And that's what we're looking for. If you've got energy and you've got a vision, who can hold you back? And I can see that in each of you when you share your visions. Who can hold you back? So we get that, and then we go, okay, so what could get in the way? Now we're ready to tackle the obstacles, to look at them. And people call out the obstacles. And very often fear and greed are two of the main inner obstacles that come up. Third main inner obstacle is our belief systems, our prejudices. Racism is one of the major ones that comes out, but all the prejudices that hold us away from other people. And so those are the three kind of major interior ones, but there are many that come out. And then externally, usually it's money and corruption, large institutions in one way or another, politics, perhaps money in politics, could be things like the environment and the dangers in the environment, or war as well. So there are a variety of things that come up. We get all those obstacles out there, and then we go, okay, wonderful, we have them out there. And sometimes we'll vote on what's the top one, because with the group, you want to know where you want to go and what do people think, you know, is the main one they want to tackle. And maybe you get the top three and you split into subgroups and all of that. So you're actually getting engaged now. And then you go to action. So what could we do in the world? Either globally or nationally or locally, or in our little community here, this group, or in individually. What actions could we take? What single action could we take that would more transform the world than anything else? And so we ask that from you're head of the UN, or you're just yourself. What single action? And we let people come up with 1, 2, or 3 actions that would really make a difference in either solving the obstacles or delivering the golden civilization. And so we get those up, and sometimes we vote on those as well to see if the group has subgroups within it that they'd like to focus on when they come back the next time. And then we close with something that's really wonderful. And it didn't quite work. We got a few of them in the conversation the other night, but it didn't quite work because people got into the kind of the conversation. But we close with inspirational commitments. So the question is, like, Shabraz, you started this off inspiring us all with your personal commitment. Man, whoa. I mean, it really launched us. Yeah, beautiful. And so what we want to do is we want to close the meeting with those kind of commitments. And if possible, if there's anything new that's come up during the meeting, where if someone goes, you know, I really want to listen better to my neighbors, and I'm going to make that attempt every day. Every day I'm going to try to listen to someone new, or every week, you know, or I'm going to do an act of kindness that I wouldn't normally do, or I'm going to get involved here in America. I'm going to register people to vote. We're going to get out there. We're going to do something. So whatever their personal commitments are, we seek to have them speak personally there were several people who spoke very beautifully about their brother and sister. They voted on the other side. They're like this when they talk politics. And this woman came on, and Grace, I don't think she was any younger than you. And I'm not sure how much younger I am, but we got together, and she said, I'm gonna listen, and I'm gonna see if I can't bridge that gap. So it was just yeah, beautiful. So those kind of inspirational commitments at the end, and we close with that. And we try to close also with one of the commitments we look for is, would any of you be willing to host a golden civilization conversation in one of your communities? And we'd be glad to coach you because we've got all these resources online, or we'd be glad to join you, like Mary in particular has volunteered. Anytime anybody wants someone to come from Arizona, from Scottsdale, and to any place in the world, she's really excited to participate. And Laura and Natalie and me, we're open to that as well. We definitely want to be supportive. So we try to inspire individuals to think even of doing it with their family over their kitchen table, you know. So we close with that and setting up a meeting 2 or 3 weeks later on. So that's the basic structure, just to remind everybody of it. And so I'm going to pause there, having delivered that, and see if there's any comments from any of you before we go and look at a little bit more what happened the other night. So any thoughts there? Nandish, you've had your, no? Okay. Any thoughts there at all?
Yeah.
Yeah, Mary.
I will, George. So a couple of things. Number one of the things that came to me, and it's difficult in chat to kind of build that. How would that be? You might hear one person say, oh, good or great or whatever. And Laura and Louis taught me this, but to go from the screen, chat how that would be for you. And then have maybe someone that you've seen in the group who is pretty aspirational anyway, like Shaz, we would use you to just read out the chat list, so that we say, oh, it'd be amazing, that would be perfect, that would be wonderful, so that we get, everybody gets to participate in the chat, but the words go out, and the words are so powerful. So that was one thing that was just coming up for me. And it goes from seeing us in Zoom to taking the time to typing and chatting something. So a little bit of variety. And the big question I have for your big group, George, is, and I think we're going to run into this too as we get going. How did the call go out? What was the call to the gathering? Was it email? And if it was email, what was the subject line that we could use that would invigorate people to come?
Yeah, beautiful and wonderful. And let me deal with both those things because they're both really important. The chat is very valuable, and when we have a large group, that's exactly what we want to do is get as much into the chat as possible. And Laura might share, because she's the one putting it into the chat. It's helpful to have, if you got a large group, it's helpful to have at least 2 of you, because one of you is going to be more kind of facilitating, and the other one's got to make sure that they're coordinating behind the scenes to make sure that important things are coming out. And I'm going to ask Laura to share that in just a moment. But the chat's very valuable, but it's also wonderful. You can get everybody to raise their hand and wave. If it would be good, would that be cool or not? Raise your hands if you think that'd be cool. Yeah, and then you go, yeah, and you get that. So you can do things like that, and then chat, and then have someone read it out. And I think it's wonderful to have someone who already has kind of an aspirational, an inspirational flavor to their languaging and their vibe, their being, to be the reader. I think it's a wonderful idea that came from Laura and Louis. The other question you had about sending out, we're sending out emails. This last one that we did not, to my knowledge, we didn't send out an email because we were part of a conference. And it was one of the most, I don't know if you use the term kludgy, but that's my term for something that doesn't quite fit together. And this was one of the most kludgy conferences, even though it was profound in lots of ways and beautifully done in lots of ways. But we didn't know until practically the last minute exactly when we would be on, so we couldn't really advertise it that well. We didn't even know completely that we would be on. I mean, it was really a little weird in some ways. And we were being promised 500 people, and then we were promised, you know, well, maybe it'll be, you know, a dozen or something like that. And we had probably 15 or 20, I think, over the time frame, which was fine. It was wonderful. But I would have loved to have 500. I'm eager for it. So we're doing emails, and we'd be happy to share. I know that Natalie and Laura have some frames that they could probably share through resources, but I'm going to toss the ball to Laura, who knows these things better than I do.
Thank you, George. Well, I'll start with the emails. Mary, one of the things that we found that to work is that if you're sending it to an audience that knows you, just tell them how appreciated you are to have them in your audience. And I think that people just need to know that you've invited them and that you would love for them to be present. So however it comes out from you, knowing that it comes from your heart is the best way for it to come across, because it's going to be most authentic. Certainly starting with "you're invited" or something enthusiastic, using the little emojis. I mean, that might work, but each person has their own style, and we want to welcome each person's style. So I will probably push that back to you and say, let's brainstorm some ideas and see what might work for your audience. But I think that each person here has different cohorts, different communities, and has a different way of connecting with them. And it's so important that you use something that's authentic and genuine to you. So that's the first thing. And then around the chats, I love your suggestion of let's actually hear each person. What do they think? How would that be? And actually have that cataloged in the chat, because one of the great things about Zoom when you run it through your Zoom account is that you get a text file after you close out the Zoom session, and it keeps the whole chat that you had. And that's fantastic, because that means that everything that was shared, all of that enthusiasm, all of the questions, that you can always come back to. So if you're not familiar with that, I'm happy to kind of share with anyone here how to access those text files, because I found them invaluable. And then the next thing is around what George was referencing with the recording information as it's shared into the PowerPoint. So what I found to be successful is that I will have, George will facilitate the meeting and I'll be behind the scenes, and yet at the same time he'll ask, let's show this slide. And that allows the group to stay engaged, and it really works nicely because we're able to move from a full group picture where everyone's able to see everyone else and see how engaged everyone is, but then also look at the work that we've created. And so what I do behind the scenes is, while he's facilitating with each in what we call gallery view in Zoom, is that I'll go add information to the PowerPoint, and I'll add it directly to the PowerPoint so that when I'm called to share my screen, it will be in whatever state it is. Sometimes there's a lot of information being shared and you only get a few things, but sometimes it's done through the chat. And what's great about that, so it really depends on the audience, but say we have, what George and I worked with on Monday was about 15 people. And so we just invited them to share out loud, and I just recorded the information right onto the PowerPoint. But if it was the 500 people that they told us were going to show up, then we would have invited them to just share in the chat. And I probably would have sent something out afterwards that was more encapsulating of what was shared, because it's important that everyone who shares something, that their voice is recorded in that vision, in the obstacles, in the actions and commitments. Go ahead, George.
Let me just add something here, Mary and others. The notion of 500 people chatting and sharing what a golden civilization looks like, it is astonishing to me. And to think that we would then, it's like you've got a book at the end of the thing. You've got a huge article. You've got everything. And kindness was mentioned 15 times among the 500 people. ending racism was mentioned 37 times. Peace on earth was mentioned, whatever number of times. And you've got that now as a document of human beings all over the world, or whatever this community was, sharing. These are our visions of what we think a great world is. And these are the action steps that need to get taken. And so you've also got all those action steps that the politicians need to hear. And so it's really exciting to me to think that we'll have large groups like that. We haven't had one that large yet, and that we're gathering more and more the strength Laura's gathering and now sharing with you of what we can do behind the scenes to gather that information. So I just want to share that. It's just an incredible excitement that we have about those possibilities. As well as you can see, just the 9 of us here, we're gaining inspiration from all of us, from having a real conversation going back and forth all over the world. It's just wonderful, no matter how it works. Laura, do you want to add some more there?
I'll turn it over to Grace, who has a question.
Great.
I actually must admit that it is not a question, it is an announcement.
Well,
But you're all invited to a Golden Civilization meeting on Monday, South African time at 10 o'clock, which Mary actually, I've got an ongoing group that I call Conscious Aging that meets fortnightly on Zoom now. And I just thought I'm going to do a Golden Civilization. I'm not ready for it, but if I wait until I'm ready for it, I don't know. So that's what I've been talking about, Laura. And I don't know if Mary's going to get up at 1 o'clock again this Monday. She did last Monday. And you guys, are you in Ireland or England, Nandish? And
I'm going to ask, is it 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. South African?
10 a.m. South African time. It's now nearly 8 o'clock our time.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's 6 p.m. here.
So what time is it with you?
6 p.m. right now.
Okay, okay. Maybe anybody who'd like to come, please just put your name in the chat and I will send you an invitation. And before Monday, Laura, you, Mary, and I are going to get together and work out how we're going to run it.
Woo!
That sounds like a wonderful plan. Thank you, Grace. Thank you for the invitation to everyone here. That's so appreciated.
Oh, that's so wonderful, Grace.
So now, ladies and gentlemen, I must very sadly bid you a farewell, but I know I'm going to be at both the recording and the chat. And so it's been wonderful to be with an inspirational group of people who are working to make the world a better place. And I look forward to reporting back and ongoing learning from all of you. Thanks for a wonderful meeting, George.
Thank you, Grace.
You're unforgettable. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Take care.
Wow. Well, usually we save those for the end, but that was quite lovely. Anybody else or Laura?
Yeah, are there any questions about kind of either the role that George has described around the facilitator or the role of the recorder, as I'm calling my role in these conversations? Yeah, Rory.
Was Rory speaking or leaving?
Oh, sorry, yeah, I just sent a quick message there. Grace, I think Grace is gone. I hope to be there on Monday, really look forward to it. And in the meantime, I've got to bring my daughter to football, so I can't miss that date.
Oh, you can't.
I'll see you all soon.
Okay,
Thanks again.
Rory, good to see you. Say hi to your mom.
See you. Yeah, thanks, George.
You're
See you
welcome.
guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Any specific questions before we go back to Laura again?
I had
Nandish, yeah.
question in terms of, so with doing the talks, my main question to go further on with the talks is so you know how we have the actions to do.
Yeah.
What action, for example, let's say we want to end racism, for example. what action could we do as a small group apart from raising awareness to really to end it? Like, I feel like what other people would think, well, because this vision is really grand, like it's scary to some to think that we want to really change the way society is and the world, the way the world works. What actions can the average person take to push further towards that goal?
Yeah, wonderful. And should we do a little sample here? So
Sure.
let's say we've done the first meeting, and in the first meeting, a world without racism is part of the vision of the golden civilization. In the obstacles, racism is voted toward the top, maybe at the top of the group. Then in the action steps, again, people, so what happens is we're now at action steps, and people are considering action steps in the initial meeting. They're considering them for many different things, and there may be some having to do with ending racism, but some having to do with the environment or kindness or mindfulness or different kinds of things, or politics. And so that's up, and then we have commitments at the end. Second meeting comes around, and because we voted ending racism as being right up at the top, we know that it's going to be a focus. So we come in, we ask, is anything to be added to the golden civilization that we had last time? Anything to be added to the obstacles? And see if there's anything there. And then come back to, well, this is what we voted last time. Do people agree with this? Do we need to change the vote in any way? Do you want to revote? Do you feel like this is strong? And if racism is the number one thing, or up near the top, we definitely have a significant time for it. So what you might do then is say, just simply say, in terms of actions from the group, what do you think could be done globally, nationally, locally, and particularly, and you as leader, you could say, I'm particularly interested in what we could do as a group.
Mm-hmm.
You could actually throw that out, and individually and all the rest. Have the whole thing up there, so you've got a big open frame for people to throw in whatever they think of, because the wider the frame, the more likely people are going to come with outside the box, off the wall, great unusual ideas. They're going to be stimulated. So keep the frame really open at first, but include the small as well as the large. So we could do a little sample of that right here. Would you like to try that? And then we move to commitments after that. Should we try that? I think that'd be wonderful. So let's see. So we've all decided that racism, and it's fine if someone says, well, I love the idea. Here's my thought. It's not going to be where I'm going to take action because I have limited action over here. This is going to be my focus. So in a group, we want to have every voice. So it might be in a group of 20, you've got 13 who said racism is the main thing. That's going to be the thing. One person is working just with homeless people. One person is just working with mindfulness practice. 3 others are working to change the political structure for a variety of reasons. 2 others are working with environment. And that's the frame of the whole group. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So here we are. Now we're a group. Shall we do this? And I'm off the top of my head. So what I've actually, Laura and Natalie and I have had conversations about how we can do more outreach. Financial planners are overwhelming, and Mary as well. Financial planners are overwhelmingly white in America, certainly, and true in Britain as well. And so let's do outreach, and let's think about how we can do outreach. And at any opportunity that opens up, let's think outside the box how to be more welcoming, more engaging, and how can we be more proactive as well, without insulting people or making them feel belittled in some way, because we're identifying them in some way. In our family, Kathy in particular has reached out to numerous people in her network and is helping them, both Black and white, to have conversations in their communities around ending racism and how to do it. And with one of the things that's come up in the Black community for her has been some people saying, I'm asked too many times to speak. So just learning, learning that inside of ourselves has been really valuable. So for me, in terms of globally, nationally, locally, for me, I've spoken out on Facebook on numerous occasions that it's time to end racism now, and that ending racism could be the beginning. I mean, doing it globally, really making it work, could be the beginning action of a global civilization, of a golden civilization. Because if we do that, then we join together as a human being, as one kind of human race, basically, and we are all together. And so making that first, and then I've spoken out again and again that just talking about it isn't enough. And I've spoken out again and again that in America, we need massive reparations, massive economic reparations. And it needs to be done wisely, so that, because what can happen is you can have the right wing, I come from a right wing, super conservative, rural community kind of background, and they can feel resentful. So we need to do something that also lessens inequality everywhere, but at the same time massively so in the Black community. So that's, so I've been speaking out, and we're looking for opportunities every time we can, and trying to be thoughtful and learn. One of the things I'm looking forward to, I probably talked too much here, but one of the things I'm looking forward to is a group has reached out from England, Nandish and Shabraz, and Laura knows more about this. Gary, I forget his name. Gary, what's his last name? Do you remember? He's doing conversations with 2 to 4 people coming from different racial backgrounds, and kind of just simply talking together on Zoom, and he's facilitating them all over the world. So we're eager to engage and promote those conversations. So that's, I talk too much. Who would you like to go next? Nandish, you've called this out. Who would you like to go next? Or would you like to go next?
I like Mary.
You're on mute, Mary. Oh, there you go.
Thank you, Nandish. Yeah, a couple of things have come to mind. One of the things I'm repeating, I try to find in my own life, how can we be gentler about this whole topic of racism? It's so charged. And one of the meetings I attended was with the Unity Church of Houston, where I had a friend who was moderating, and Dr. Jean Ladding, who was
You're on camera.
I'm sorry, were you saying something?
No.
Oh, but Dr. Jean Ladding, who is a consultant in the arena of D&I, which I thought they were 3 initials, D&I, but it's diversity and inclusion. So I'm learning some of the lingo within corporations. But she said, and I've been using this and trying to, it's such a beautiful translation, is that there's as much of a charge when you use the R word, racism, as there is when you use the N word. Now, I couldn't quite see it, but when you look at the defensiveness that immediately comes up, if someone's called a racist, they have all the reasons they are not racist. They don't want to be racist. How dare you call me a racist? It's so hard and it's so tough, and it's such a us versus them somehow. So we get in this really locked discussion. What Jean Ladding was saying, and I loved what she had to say, is that there is a spectrum of racism, just like there is a spectrum of anything else. So that when we talk about it, we can talk about the fact that it may be that, I'm doing all kinds of outreach to financial planners in my community, finding out, how do you build trust? How do we get more financial planners on, thinking I'm non-racist, and yet I want my children to go to a private school that's, mostly white. So I'm on the spectrum, because sometimes I'm, further on the R curve than I am not on the R curve. So it's not a one or the other. That we're all in both places all the time. And that, to me, that's just such a gentler way to walk into the conversation of, we don't know necessarily when we're being racist. I use the example of me with women's right to vote. You know, in 1920, we're only coming up on 100 years, you know, and yet what Robin DiAngelo, the author of White Fragility, said was, all women? To women's right to vote. I thought I was right there doing my feminist thing. Women have only had the right to vote in America for 100 years. Well, I didn't even consider that it was not all women. So wow, so I'm on the spectrum there, just in my not knowing. And I think it's a gentler way to initiate some discussions.
Wow.
So that's been really big for me.
Wow. Wonderful. Thank you, Mary. Nandish, it's your call. Who would you like to go next?
Go on, Shabraz. You're on mute. I really liked the spectrum description, by the way. I've never really thought of racism in that way, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, there are always going to be situations where we may be racist, but not like, it's not always black and white. Like, we might be racist too in a certain situation that we might not even think about. So that's really got me thinking. I've never thought of it like that. Thank
you. Firstly, I just want to say, fantastic point, Mary. Honestly speaking, that was just mesmerizing what you were speaking about in terms of how we can make a change in our day-to-day. So thank you very much for sharing that. And honestly, your time is, I take your time for granted. Thank you. I would like to speak a bit about education, obviously. Try to change the topic a bit, if that's okay. But with education, I believe that we are conditioned to think and believe a certain way. We're not taught life skills, and I think that through the education system that we could create in the future, we should be taught more life skills and facilitate that. So I think that's really, really important. But what do you guys think are, and I just want to kind of get to understand the group a bit more as well. What do you guys think is something that's important? And we can put it in the chat so we can get engaged in the chat. What do you guys think is a really important life skill that we could start teaching? And I can screenshot that and start displaying that with my youth groups and start making sessions around that as well, because it's about action as well as doing the theory today. We can put that into action immediately. So I'll start off in the group quickly. I'll write something. So.
To me, I think what one keystone is financial literacy, which a lot of people, especially the youth, just don't have. And I think that a lot of people's problems stem from not being good with managing finances, or not really understanding money, like getting into all sorts of trouble financially because of like keeping up with the Joneses, keeping up with what society expects from them. A lot of people, if they just looked at their own goals, looked at what they own, what they wanted for themselves, and saved for themselves and understood how money works, a lot of people would be happier rather than just chasing materialistic things for the sake of it, for the sake of that short-term happiness. Like, what I genuinely don't understand, for example, is how most people in the USA or even in the UK are 1 or 2 months away, like paychecks away from complete disaster. And I don't know whether that's an issue with the financial literacy or the system itself, but that is not sustainable. Like, a thought that I have quite constantly is the world we live in right now cannot be sustained for a very long time, where the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting richer. Like, how can that be possible? How can that be sustained for a long time, where at one point the poor is just not going to take it?
No, I absolutely agree, and I think it's so true as well. We're not taught financial literacy. We're not taught how to do our taxes. We're not taught how to what to do and budget our money, to track and spend, and we don't have this understanding. So I think definitely hit the nail on the head there with what you're talking about. And in the sense, I believe one of the things is time management, and I believe you can do things in life, and you can make more of more, but you can't have more time. We are limited with the amount of time that we have. We have 168 hours a week, 365 days, and we're so limited. So to understand what to do in your time, in your development as a person, in your education, in your life, I think is vital. But I want someone else to jump on the call as well, if that's okay, to share their opinion, if that's okay. So I don't really know too many of you, but if I could get, is Natalie okay to talk about her views? Is that okay?
Yeah,
Is that
sure.
okay? Oh, awesome. Thank you.
So like two things that came to mind for me. One, because I read a great book on this, and that made me want to think about it. But like splitting like money and like household work, I feel like in like a house, and like how to like run a household, that's like relating to like modern time period as opposed to like a traditional nuclear family, I feel like is really important. And a lot of times like it's something that can kind of like continue on down a family. Like if there's not like a strong basis, it's hard to learn from like your parents, or if they did things a different way. So it'd be nice to have like an unbiased information source about that. And then my other thing, I took a government class like in my high school, and I still to this day cannot believe why it was not necessary for everyone in the class to take it. Just because it's so important to understand like how your government works, how like if you want to make change, like what the channels are to do that, how you can actually like make a difference as one person. And lately, like we've been having so many issues about like the mail-in voting and how that works, and it's all state specific, so sometimes it's hard to find out the information, and there's different election days for all of these cities and everything else. And in a school, like it's a very localized group of people, and it would be a great way to disseminate that information. And like there should be no excuse for misinformation to be disseminated about something that pertains to like your rights, and it's just a way to keep people in the dark.
Beautiful. Wow.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Natalie. Well done. Great addition. And anyone else?
With the splitting household work and money in a modern household, I completely agree. Like with me and my partner, so when we lived together, we sort of had we understood that compromise is necessary in a relationship. Like we didn't have the outlook that the girl does the cleaning and the girl does the cooking and the guy just comes. Like a lot of people expect that in a relationship. Like they've movies and everything, you get that the guys are the breadwinners, the women are the ones that stay at home. But that's not healthy. Like not every couple is gonna work like that. Like I did nearly all of the cooking because I enjoyed it, and that was something that worked for us. She preferred to do the cleaning, so that worked for our relationship. And in terms of money, we both understood that if we're together, whether we have my pot or her pot, it's still our pot. If we're going to be building a family, if we're going to be building our own family, it's not your money, my money, it's our money. What's the point of thinking individually when you're together? And a lot of people just don't think that. Like people, like in general, in the UK, and like in media, what you see is a lot of females expect for guys to be financially able and to sort of pay for their way, especially my generation. I don't know about other generation, but what I see on like social media is females expect guys to be more financially well off, and that puts a lot of pressure on men to perform, even if they don't necessarily want to.
Yeah. All very, very true, and good stuff. And clearly these things, starting from Shahbaz's question about education, what can we do? And so these are all kind of action steps that we could do within an education framework that would be really, really valuable. And in the Golden Civilization conversation, in a way, that's where we are, and we're approaching the end of that conversation. We have 10 minutes left. And so we've been, and it's been wonderful. Nandish, thank you so much for kind of charging us with this question first about racism, and then the question about education, because these are where we come to. And once that's been out there, then the question is, what the remaining thing is, what are we inspired to do going forward? And are there ways that we can, as a group, come back together and help each other? We've already shared some of that, but if there's anything remaining on that level, we'd love it. So,
George, if it's okay, I'd like to just share my screen, because I did record this conversation as much as I could in the PowerPoint, and I think that it's important to see like how we can represent that, what we did verbally and through the chat in the PowerPoint. So let me just do that. So hopefully you can see this action steps. It's a little small because it was a little bit, there was a lot, obviously. But what I did was I love the additional question around education of what are those important life skills that youth need. And so I included everything that was shared in the chat, thanks to that question, and then more around what George and Mary shared, what Nandish shared. And so now, as George is saying, like what I love about the action steps is that this is really a brainstorm. This is what we imagine other people to do. It could be ourselves, but it allows us to have that freedom to really think wildly about how we solve a deep-seated problem, a systemic problem. And then what's great is that when we move to commitments, we're taking a moment to say, okay, well, what can I do? What am I willing to do right now? And say it out loud in a group of potentially friends, strangers, people you've just met, people that you've known for years, and say, hey, I'm going to do this. Because when we say something out loud, that means that we are more likely to do it. It's just kind of proven, and other people repeating that back to you and you saying it again. I mean, this is all part of actually moving that energy, that potential energy, into action. And so I'm curious, like what are you willing to do? And I'll write it down here. I'll stop share, but I'll write down what our commitments are as a group.
okay. And in particular, if you feel like sharing, and we don't push for everybody to share, because we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable that they have to do something. But of course, we love it when that happens. And so we usually look for, is there anything that's come up that's been new that you hadn't been thinking of, or might have been back in the back burner, but now you're going, well, I really want to do that. And if I think if I'm going to add something, I mean, I've got so many things that I'm doing and I'm inspired by and excited about in terms of helping to change the world and make it a better place. But Nandish, I was very, very touched that you asked directly about racism and what we're doing. And I'm going to have a further conversation with my wife, Kathy. So that's coming up. We're both engaged, and it's very important to both of us. So thank you for bringing it up again and giving me this inspiration to talking with her one more time about how we could deepen around this and strengthen our engagement in regard to it.
George, I'd like to share an experience that I had recently that really enlightened me and shook me at the same time. So I had this personal trainer, and he is Black, and I've known him for 6 months, and looks like we're going to be friends because I like this guy a lot. So he shared with me a story a couple of weeks ago. He said one of the happiest times of my life when I was in Paris. I said, yeah, who wouldn't be happy? That's a wonderful city, and I love it. He said, that's not it. I said, why? He said, because here, I am Black first. When I was in Paris, I was an American first. And that really that really got to me. I thought, oh my God. So I've been thinking about that for the last couple of weeks, and I'm ashamed to admit, no, I'm not ashamed. I admit I had some vestiges of racism in my own thinking left, and that's not why I brought it up. But when I was thinking about it, and in certain situations, I know I can veer towards negative perceptions, and I thought, oh my God, this is really. So that was really a life's lesson for me when Keith shared that with me. In fact, I'll see him this afternoon. I'll tell him about this conversation we're having, and thanking him for this teaching me something new.
Beautiful.
You don't think I don't think it was racist, but I got some left.
I think
To work.
very, very powerful, Martin, that you are self-aware enough to know of your thinking. Like it's very good that you can highlight yourself to know, like even me personally, with you saying that, like sometimes I'll think and it'll be slightly racist, and that's not what I believe, but it's what I've been conditioned to think. So I think it's very, very good of you to be self-aware of your thought and your thought processes, and to understand why you think what you think.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
We just have a few minutes left, and let me just see if Mary or Laura have anything. Maybe Mary, if you've got anything for closing, and then Laura, if you have anything. Mary.
Boy, George, they say that you know where you're supposed to be when time flies. I can't believe we're at the end of the meeting, and just I have such appreciation, and I'm inspired. There's a courage building that comes from these kinds of conversations, and I have more courage because I know that more people around the world are aligned with what I consider right thinking. So if we can move ourselves in that direction, such power in what we're doing.
Beautiful, beautiful.
To ask George something that I had written as a reminder. I got an email that you're doing mindfulness practice.
Yes.
I'm very interested in joining that.
Yes, Nandish, I would love to have you join. It'd be a thrill. And I have a pretty good group right now. Unfortunately, it's at 7 p.m. East Coast time, but I'm intending to start one in September that will be at around 1 p.m. East Coast time. So it'll be evening time, UK time. And it'll be on Wednesdays. And I'm going to mix in maybe one out of every 3 or 4 meetings. We'll do a little bit of golden civilization, but otherwise it's going to be really strictly mindfulness and establishing a strong mindfulness practice. Great to hear. We'll make sure you hear about it.
Definitely.
Thank you. Natalie just shared something inspiring on the chat. I want to make sure I get a copy of that because that looked very exciting to me. Do you want to say anything about it before Laura closes?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be really brief, but I'll write an email to like my professor or my teacher from high school who I had like a really good relationship with, kind of just expressing like thanks, especially like in this time period that I feel like I have a better knowledge. I was a political science minor in college, potentially as a result. And so I'll just like express like gratitude for that, and asking to like get introduced like via email to the principal, which is new. It's a new person since like I went there, and see if we can get some sort of like elective course, because the one that I took was AP, which means, like people had to get recommended for it, and it's not as available to everyone.
Woo, wonderful. Wow, Natalie, that's so great. Cool. Laura, anything you want to add?
Well, again, I mean, this is fantastic, and I just want to briefly just show my screen because this is what we're building towards, is the commitments. And so you can see that everything that's shared, especially if it's done via chat, it's easy to copy and paste, but we're able to put those under commitments. And feel free, I mean, if in your group you want to write the person's name, I figure because this is shared publicly, I didn't do that, but that way it makes it more of a sense of accountability. So this is how it works, and we're all part of it. And I so appreciate this conversation and everyone's contribution to it, because we're making differences happen just by vocalizing them out loud and hearing the enthusiasm of everyone else in this group and that support.
For my accountability, since we did the education, that's really given me actionable items. So I'm going to speak to in terms of like financial literacy, anything that I feel confident enough to educate, I'll be speaking to my friends and just giving as much information as I can in those subjects. Like, it's really given me something, not just a conversation to have, but actionable content that I can give to people. So within the next 3 weeks, I'll definitely hold, whether it's a golden civilization conversation or not, I'll definitely hold those educational traits that I will do.
Fabulous. Wow. What a great group, and what great inspiration to leave on. Thank you all. We'll join again in 3 weeks, and it's an open community for people who want to learn about golden civilization conversations, want to participate in one, or want to find a way to lead them, which is why we call it for teachers, because we want to get it happening as much as we can. Thank you all. You've inspired me. Thank you. Wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you, Laura, for writing everything down. It's really helpful.
Yeah, and I'll share that out, okay?
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. And Natalie, if you can stay on, I want to talk. You and I have a wonderful. Thank you.